Viewer discretion is advised.
We used to get hidings and then like compare marks, see who's got the biggest mark. And then whoever had the biggest like mark, like Fusibao mark, yeah, you're the strongest, my bro. So we got married, we had a kid, and then we found out that we could not communicate with each other. And so we divorced. At that point in time, I thought I just wasn't good enough, so to the point that it drove me to like a suicide attempt. You can try your best to do good by the church. They're still going to talk badly about your performance.
Mandate.
Welcome to Mandate, where we navigate fresh perspectives and nothing is off the table. Tonight's guest is from Tamaki Makaurau, West Okilari. He is an amazing, promising musician, young artist who has a unique style in terms of linguistics and also using his bilingual skills in terms of using Samoan and English in terms of his music. The man, in 2001, Outbreak song. The song was Femoni Air, and in 2023, just recently, one of his latest tracks is called Siva Mai, and also the man he's renowned as a radio DJ on the Morning Check at New FM. Please put your hands together for the man himself, the Western Guide.
Malo lover, so full. Thank you, Pete. That was crazy, bro. Made me sound really important just then. Thank you.
Yeah, you are, bro. You are 100% important. Thank you so much for jumping on board tonight. Really appreciate it, bro. And obviously, we just kind of, before we started, we just out at the back there and just kind of having a bit of a conversation in terms of where you're from out west and also your music, your style. And so kind of to warm things up a bit also, tell us about your bilingual style in terms of the reggae and how that came about, because I know it's quite unique. I know people in the past have used rap with the Samoan and English, but in terms of your reggae style, what's the defining point there?
Damn. Firstly, thank you again for having me on. It's a massive honor, privilege to be on this platform, and hanging out with you guys. The music itself, so it's kind of, honestly, I want to say blame my dad. I'm going to try my best not to blame my dad for everything this whole podcast, but for me, like, my dad was 5'8", so there was a lot of Sundays where he would be like, let's write a song, let's write this like Apple song, let's turn it into a Samoan version, like write some lyrics. And so I'd be like, man, I don't know how to talk Samoan properly. So over time I learned how to write music from English to Samoan, and I've just kind of adopted that in my own music growing up. And so now that I am in a position where I'm making music and it's both Samoan and English, it's kind of my goal for people who don't really understand or speak a lot of Samoan, that they can understand what the song is from the English lyrics, and then the Samoan lyrics is for my Samoan heritage. So shout out my dad for enforcing Samoan language growing up.
That's cool. And how appropriate it is. It was Samoan Language Week this week as well.
I know.
And so to have you on and talking about your bilingual skills in terms of Samoan and English. And so obviously now you're Samoan. You're fluent in Samoan now?
I want to say fluent. I think I was fluent when I was 13. Now that I'm 26, not so much. I just, kind of spend a lot of time at radio school and stuff, speaking English all the time. But I can hold a conversation. I can speak pretty good Samoan. Just can't do any of the Makai stuff. I don't know how many people can do that these days. It's a bit of a skill. But yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome,
try my best.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. Because I can imagine that would be one of your, in terms of selling points in terms of your music. But how important is your culture in terms of Samoan, being Samoan, and implementing that into your music?
Oh, it's super important. And I think I don't speak for myself here, maybe myself and anybody else my age, but there was a massive identity crisis growing up, especially being Samoan, born in New Zealand, and so to a lot of people they're like, yeah, you're Samoan, you're not really Kiwi, are you? So I'm like, oh, well, I was born in New Zealand, it makes me a Kiwi. So I'm like, cool, I'll identify as Kiwi. And then you go to Samoa and you meet your Samoan family, they're like, oh, you're not really Samoan, you're actually Kiwi. So I'm like, so where do I sit? And so the importance for me of including Samoan lyrics and just words in my songs, it's just so that I can remind myself that regardless of my situation, I'm still Samoan. My heritage is Samoan, my family's Samoan, I'm Samoan, and that's it. Like, that's my thing that I can use for my music and anything that I'm doing. I'm allowed to.
Cool, man. Yeah. Awesome. I know.
And is that something you're kind of like at peace with now, or is it still kind of in the back of your mind a little bit, where maybe some days you just have good days and other days?
Absolutely. Yeah. Some days are great, some days are horrible. But for the most part, I've always told myself that regardless of my situation and where I am at life, I'm always Samoan. It's something my dad told me. you know, because a lot of people do like, oh yeah, I'm like 50% this, 50% that, but we're Samoan. You know, I have Tongan blood in me, so I'm Tongan too, and it's always good to be proud of those, you know, those cultures and whatever other cultures that you're surrounded by, you know, Fijians and stuff at work, and so I embrace their culture as well.
It's cool.
Yeah, just thinking about you know, how we define what our culture is, like, you know, when we talk to people and they go, "Oh, I'm Samoan," like, what does that mean to you? Like, and we sort of have like, does it speaking the language define our culture, or is it like our blood, or what does it mean to you?
Man, what does being Samoan mean to me? That means everything to me. You know, growing up, and this is honest truth. Growing up, I didn't want to be Samoan. As a kid, man, I was surrounded by a lot of Palangis and a lot of Samoans as well. But when I was a kid, I was just like, this is terrible. You know, getting hidings and just was not happy. I think I was playing the victim a lot as a kid. And so growing up and learning about my culture and being able to understand why certain characteristics are instilled within Samoans, and I'm like, you know, it's something to be proud of, something we're all collectively working on, the generational trauma, all of that stuff. You know, so being Samoan to me, regardless, that's just my story. You know, I have to be proud of it, no matter how good or how bad it or how flawed it is.
That's good, because I reckon like there's so many people in that having this cultural identity crisis, because like if they can't speak it, they're like, I'm not worthy to be Samoan, or but it's ingrained in us. Like for me, both my parents Samoan, like I'm Samoan, like, and so I have a right to like, rep my culture, rep where I'm from, and so it's cool having this conversation, because like I reckon there's so many youngins out there, like a lot of them like I don't want to be Samoan, because people say you don't even speak it, you know.
It's funny. For me, the conversation is always, why are you gatekeeping for? Like, if it's something that's going to annoy you, why don't you teach them?
That's good.
You know, they're like, you can't even speak Samoan. Okay, great. Teach them then.
Yeah.
Teach them something, just anything. Don't just sit there complain about this issue, because it's an issue that's been around for years and it'll continue to be around for years. It just depends on how people grew up, you know. And I'm constantly reminded, just my friends and people around me, they had different like backgrounds to myself, you know, especially in their Samoan as well. And I'm like, what the hell? You didn't have an ice cream container for lunch? I was like, what is that? You know, I had a proper Sistema one every single day. I was like, what is this? Is that abnormal? Is that abnormal? But I'm like, you know, they're still Samoans. You know, they're still allowed to claim their Samoan to me. I was like, okay, you know, you gotta just help like teach people what your experiences were, learn what their experiences were, and collectively we can all help each other.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's so interesting, because, man, 100%. Like, there are a lot of people, myself included, that just struggled. Sometimes it feels like you have to qualify to label yourself as Samoan. And I remember growing up, because I went to Linfield, like there weren't many islanders at that school, and so all my friends from South Auckland like left them behind and started in this new school. And I remember being like, there were kind of two aspects of it. There was like what I heard in the media was all negative stuff about Samoans and islanders, and so there was a part of me that was like, I'm now in this mini Pākehā school. I'm like, nah, I don't want to be associated with those guys that you read in there. But then also, by the time I was old enough to realize that, hey, I am Samoan, like I should go out and learn, then it was like the fear of like, I'm Samoan, but I don't know the language. And so it's always like, I always felt like I was saying I'm Samoan with an asterisk. So it was like, you know, like, I'm Samoan, but I can't speak the language. I don't know how to do like, you know, all these other things that you would expect in your mind. Wherever your mind goes to when you think of Samoans, I can't do any of that. It's just literally my parents are Samoan. And I used to always think like, I'm not qualified to be Samoan. So I always pull on like my stepdad's culture, like I'm part Māori, like, yeah. And so I just feel you, and I know that there's lots of other people that are New Zealand born Samoan that for whatever reason, like you mentioned before, like there's not many people that can speak in the Makai way. Yeah. But I think also just regular like Samoan language, like there's a big push for it now, but when we were coming through high school, never. So I just think it's cool that you've been able to find yourself and have their support. And just, own it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of us that it's scary to own it.
Yeah,
So,
it is. I think, I give a lot of kudos back to my parents. My parents were kind of, they were really strict on us growing up, and it was just kind of, I think there was a couple of years where my dad was like, no one's allowed to speak English in this house. And for those 2 years, I hated him just heaps. And, my mom was the same. She'd be like, make sure you don't speak English here. So I'd struggled through those 2 years, but those 2 years were really pivotal for my language journey, because after that, I was able to hold conversations. I was able to ask like questions and, talk to people in Samoan language, which has been really beneficial for me as an adult, because sometimes we deal with the elderly, and I can conversate with them to an extent. I'm like, cool, we can communicate at least.
That's
which
awesome.
I think, as long as people are trying.
How old were you when they sort of implemented that?
Bro, late 16, 17, by then I probably had like real Kiwi accent, and so trying to speak Samoan, I'm like, oh man, this sucks. This sucks. It was like learn your peppers, that was it. And then 16, 17, I was like, only speak Samoan at home, that's it.
What made them want to do that at that later part of your adolescence?
Man, I wish I could ask them. I probably should, but I don't know. I just remember one day we had a family meeting, as you do. You have kongai, then you have family loku, and then Dad's sitting there with his jandals like, yeah, whai kako kala. And I'm like, damn it, someone's going to get a hiding. And then, he's just like, I think it's time for us to speak Samoan in this household more often. And it's just because I had really thick slang accent back when I was a kid, Hey, stop that now. Can I jump in? So my dad's just like, no. We need to make sure that we're not losing our culture. Even though you're schooling here in New Zealand and you're learning how to speak English every day, it's important that we speak Samoan.
Jeez. Awesome. Man, kudos to your dad, bro, because I don't know, I'm just thinking that he probably saw something or kind of said something in terms of identity and around culture. And obviously, we talk about losing identity in our Samoan culture and even the language also. Yeah. But kudos to your dad for doing that and sticking within the 2 years and getting you to really speak it, because I can guarantee, you look back now and think, man, that's probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to you. Hell yeah. And I think what really helped me was learning about my parents' journey, So learning about how they came over to New Zealand. My dad was born here, so he was pretty much the same. Couldn't speak Samoan. He had his kids, still couldn't really speak Samoan, and his dad's, hard out for Samoan. So I think he got to a point when he started, he decided he wanted to become a whaiwhiawan, and he picked up the language really well. And so I think anytime, or when we went through those 2 years of learning Samoan, for me, I was like, oh, well, he's not being a hypocrite. At least he understands, and he learned Samoan, he took his time. So it's only fair that we take our time too. Man, that's so cool, bro. Shout out my dad, Bert.
Yeah, bro. Shucks. That's cool. Did he go Ma'alua or Beulah?
We're K4, so Kalama Fo. So the church we were part of was Ifaka Asa.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Jeez. The main church is just in Woody, Wirral,
Yeah. Jeez. My family used to go there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, back in the day, the Falilis and, my cousins, not Falilis. Shucks, I feel like I'm talking off camera. Shout out to just having this cool ass
conversation, yeah.
Shout out to all the FX crew and the FRK ASA. We don't really talk about it much, but it's a big part of our culture.
Absolutely.
And I think,
absolutely.
Even though, because we grew up FX. And if it wasn't for like Sunday school, getting up learning now, peppers, and getting the hiding for it. I think it's traumatized people.
Bro, it's traumatized. Straight up, man, Charles, I was traumatized, man. Because obviously with White Sunday, you would know. And so, man, some of those peppers here, Charles, man, those days, man, they used to give me these big peppers, man, like, what the hell, I don't know anything. I'm reading these peppers, I think, man, I don't even understand what I'm even talking about. But I remember it was like you had to learn it, but I can kind of feel that that kind of that not pressure, but more so that kind of sense of, oh man, I have to learn this, but and also this dreading just to learn all this stuff. But even now that you're saying now, like, bro, I love what my dad has done because I'm able to communicate it and have these conversations. But also for your music as well, that's so awesome, bro.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. Yeah, when we talk about White Sunday and stuff, like, I think it was really important for who I am as a person. Growing up, I was fortunate enough to always be main character. you know, always be top of the class and stuff like that. And I used to just think, it's just because my dad's a fucking It's cheats.
You know, this is triggering because, man, I was the oldest in my basinga. And I always came fifth. You know how they did the prize giving?
I hated it, man.
And they got, you know, the first always got like
You got a Bible.
like a Bible,
yeah.
And then it got to me, and I must have got just a pencil. or something. And then it got to a stage. Wait, I'm the oldest. Yeah, I better start learning my peppers. And I think once I came first, and the Sunday school teacher was like, "I'm surprised." So like, yeah, far out. Talking about these different traumas.
Triggering.
It's good to
But
address
see,
it,
you
bro.
guys had this pressure of like big peppers. I had this pressure of these small peppers being the eldest and being at the back. Okay, sorry. Let's back to you. Back to you.
No. It's
I'll
always
see
good.
a counselor after this session.
Shared experiences also. Man.
Oh, man.
So shout out to the kids preparing for Sunday school coming up. I feel your pain. The only way out of it when you're in Alcalavo is to get your missus pregnant. Because I was like, I just turned 20, and then I turned up to the next White Sunday. I was going, oh, sorry guys, I'm a man now. No, oh shucks, we gotta edit that out, but that's not the
Nah, leave it in there. Shout out my brother Lassie. He did
Get
exactly
married
that.
first,
bro.
get married first, and then have kids. Shout out to
Yeah, bro.
White Sunday, that's the first time I've ever talked about. But how pivotal is it to, like, in terms of Samoan Language Week and celebrating it and actually like passing on the language to the next generation? So it's cool that we're having this chat.
Yeah.
Figures. And how has it really like helped you as a young man in the industry?
You know, in my position, and I'm really blessed to be in my position, to know two languages, Samoan and English, cheat code. It's a massive cheat code, because learning, you know, understanding how the language, understanding how language works, the Samoan language works, I can kind of understand the other languages too. So you can communicate with other islanders, and you know, when they're speaking to you about stuff that's happening to them in their culture, like, oh, that kind of sounds like the Samoan stuff, you know, and so. You can kind of listen to what they're saying, and so for me, it's been really beneficial. And passing it on, honestly, I kind of just pass it on only through my music. Besides from that, I just teach my kid how to do the bese loku, you know, just small things like that. But going back to the church, even though my dad was a whawheo growing up, I just stayed away from church. I think there's a lot of toxicity in different ways that I kind of experienced, you know, and people can say what they want, but that's just what I went through during my church journey. So I kind of just stayed away from there and had a relationship on my own with God, which sometimes is great, sometimes is horrible. But I always remember to say thank you for the good and the bad, because that's what shapes us as people, you know. So, yeah.
Gee, man.
It's a good segue. Do you want to talk about your journey in church, the toxicity that you encountered? Because I think we hardly have that table talk.
Yeah.
But only if you're all good to talk about it.
No, church is, I don't think anyone's going to come after me. It's been many years now. No, I think for me, it's the very standard argument that a lot of, what's my generation? Are we generation, not Z? What are we? Something. Millennials. Us millennials all have the same argument. And it's always like, oh, why do we always give so much money to the church? And why does a whawheo always hold all of this money and all of this stuff? And so for me, growing up and witnessing firsthand when my dad was whawheo, I was like, hold on. Whawheos actually don't hold all the money most of the time. Sometimes they do try to do good work, but still, you know, people will talk about anything they do badly, good or, you know. You can try your best to do good by the church. They're still going to talk badly about your performance or something. So for me, I always found that like annoying, frustrating as a kid growing up, and you see people trying only to be shut down, you know. And so what I thought was a safe space to go and, you know, worship and just, you know, hang out with my mates just ended up being like so many responsibilities and expectations of being like perfect kids, or just, you know, they put so much burden on the youth to put on a front. And there's always this thing of like, we got this big thing coming up, Ulinga, you guys got to go learn this dance, you got to go sing this song, and it's got to be the best, you know, make sure it's good, as opposed to like, make sure it's something you guys enjoy and something you want to give back to the Lord. It's like, no, we got to be the best in that church. we got to go show them that we do mean as. And so for me, I always found like that mindset was, looking back in hindsight, kind of toxic because we're just doing things to show face. And I found that it was a common, just a common theme throughout my church years. And, not to say anything bad about all the people I went to church with because I love them all, but it's just the reality of the kind of congregation life, so yeah.
There would have been a bit of a strain between you and your dad in terms of you leaving church, or was it just dad had just understood where you were coming from?
Definitely a strain. Definitely. I think if any person says they don't have a kind of difficult time with their dad, they're probably lying, because there's always bound to be strain and back and forth. Me and my dad had a lot of disagreements growing up, and even with my mum, but my mum was really supportive for a lot of it. So, obviously mums care about their sons a lot. So me and my dad were kind of always just fighting in the background about different things. And I think we're similar people. That's why we're two similar people. We're quite stubborn. We want what's best for each other. And so it kind of deteriorated for a while. Deteriorated? Yeah, whatever. But we've only recently kind of, go back to talking and being cool again lately, as of like the last 4 years. But before that, it was kind of rampage on rampage, disobeying my dad just on purpose sometimes, just to see him have a reaction.
Gee. but that'd be kind of interesting to unwrap also in terms of father-son relationships, especially in this context, in terms of father who's a whaiwhiao and you, your son. And then like just the whole, and just recently, you said just recently, in the last 4 years, you come together again. Yeah. And so the whole, I don't know how many years you've kind of butt heads together, but just walk us through in terms of how did it kind of like in terms of you, in terms of your relationship with dad, what was going through your mind and your mental well-being?
Man, there was one really pivotal moment, I'll tell you, it's quite funny. My dad was growling me off about something, and when you get a growling, you sit there for about 3 hours, you just take it in, just, yep, okay, yeah, okay. And I think there was one time my dad was having a go, and I'd had enough, so I stood up and I go, you know what, as long as I live in this house, I'll never be anything underneath you. My dad, I think, almost started crying. He was really upset though, but I said that to his face, and looking back now, probably not the nicest thing to say to your parent or anyone that you love. So I think from then on our relationship just started to crumble. There was a lot of things, a bit of resentment on both ends, and just kind of disagreeing on a lot of things. And around that time too, I had a baby. I was starting my own family, so I was at that like mentality, like I'm a man, I can do what I want now. So talk to me nice or don't talk to me at all. It's that type of vibe. So from then on, me and my dad disagree on a lot of things, and over time we've kind of been able to mend, and I've kind of spent some time living with his dad, and I understood why he is the way he is, the way my dad is. So I'm like, you know what, I've got to be nicer to him, because I realized that he had a pretty rough childhood too. So, so for me, I've been able to grow up and understand that he's like that because of his environment, so I've got to be a bit more compassionate. And I think it's just a good reminder to be a bit compassionate to our parents, because they were learning when they had us too, so yeah.
That's good, bro.
Hello.
Man, so how did that process of like making peace with your dad, how do you even start a process like that, especially when, things have been left, I don't know how long they were left that way, but it's always left on a sort of tense note. Who reaches out first? What do you even say? Like, is it facilitated with your mum? How did that all come to play?
It was just on stagnant for a long time. I just avoided him. I didn't really want to talk to him much, but I think over time he just started reaching out a bit more, and so around that time I was going through my own situations that I needed a dad to fall on, so I needed someone to talk to. And so slowly we just, started reaching out again, because they live in Australia, by the way. Just going to add that in there. They made the distance for me made it easier to be away from him. So over time, I don't think anything, not specifically like facilitated it, but we just kind of both understood where we were coming from, where he knew where I was coming from and I knew where he was coming from. So yeah, we were able to just look past it, our differences, and just go back to being a dad and a son, which a lot of people miss out on. So I'm grateful that I still am able to, argue with my dad and have disagreements, because some dads don't like that at all.
Yeah, it's true.
Man, it's so interesting that you got to live, did you say with your dad's dad?
Yeah.
To kind of get a glimpse into why your dad is the way he is?
Yeah. So living with my grandparents, and I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. I don't need to do anything else, because my grandma does a lot of the stuff around the house, and she's like, if you're working, you work, come home, rest, I'll do everything else. So just living with them and understanding the way my granddad was. He's a hard man. He grabs me off every third day just to, go to work. I'm like, yeah, I go to work. He's like, why do you come home before lunchtime? Like, my job doesn't, I start at 6 and I finish around 11:30. I'm all good. So he's kind of just, he moved over from Samoa. So that was his whole story. He moved over, he found a job, had his own fair share of problems, and then, projected to some extent onto my dad. My dad done the same, but I think that's human nature. We all kind of project onto our kids at some point. We've got to learn to kind of, take a step back.
Do you ever catch yourself kind of projecting
Oh, hell yeah.
similarly with your own kid?
Yeah. I think it was only like a couple of days ago, I'd made dinner and I told my daughter to do the local. She starts giggling during the local, she's doing it. She found something funny. I was angry. I was like, oh, can't wait till this is over. I'm going to grab her off, And in that moment, I was like, oh, shucks, maybe it's just better to have this conversation with her. Like, hey, look, shouldn't be laughing during the local, but it's okay. I'll let this one pass. Whereas if it was my dad, so yeah, but definitely, I think there's a lot of characteristics I've picked up just from my parents in general, because tough love. I think a lot of us grew up on tough love, and so breaking that cycle is a lot harder than it is. Like, people say it's easy to break the cycle, but it's quite hard to be a bit more, maternal with your kids.
Yeah, because it's one thing to decide to make changes, but then it's another thing to follow through with it or action it out. And sometimes what you need to do or change, but man, it's like second nature, like the way we were taught. We do the same thing, and so navigating that whole change or being different in terms of our parenting style, man, that's for me personally, it's quite challenging.
It's hard work. It is hard work. I don't know. I remember back in the days, even now, sometimes I kind of remind myself of my dad. Like, I'll say things like, "Oh man, I won't do that. I won't implement this. I'll be this. I'll be this kind of dad. I'll be this cool kind of dad." And then I find myself doing this, reverting back to what my dad used to do. So, what the heck? What am I doing?
Yeah.
What are some of the stuff like?
Yeah, just. But it is. It's interesting that we obviously. I like what you said. You said you had some good insights, and I like your self-awareness in terms of living with your granddad, and then realizing, man, so if this is what Dad had to deal with, is it, man? I can kind of really appreciate what Dad has done.
Cool. Yeah.
And so that's really good insights, because some people I think not even care, and for you to say that to Dad, because I can imagine, hey Charles and Jay, if I were to say that to my dad, man, that would have been my last.
Later, right? I tell you, every time I think about it, I'm like, why did you do that for me? Well, I guess as a kid, you learn very quickly what not to say.
But your dad was in terms of your father, because it could have been quite physical. The way we've been living and how we used to live in our culture in terms of discipline, it could have been quite physical. But your dad was kudos. Your dad, my love her for hey, not going down that route, but hey,
not sharing the full story.
I was waiting for this. All right, let's talk about my favorite hiding.
What's the choice of weapon? What's the choice of weapon?
I'll tell you all the hacks. Hidings is so funny. Being on the radio, man, it's like whenever we talk about hidings, we always have to mask it. We have to be like, discipline, we should bring discipline back. And they're like, what do you mean discipline? Oh, just a bit of touch to the face, and a couple of punishment, couple of fussy buttles to the nose, But hidings, man, it was such a big part of my life growing up, and there's people who are like, yeah, I got hiding, and then there's those people who are like, nah, I got smashed, got smashed, and I think we had a good balance, so I had a good balance of getting smashed and getting hidings, so a variety of things, and a lot of it was just because I was a bit cheeky, bit of a moipi, just thought I knew it all. But man, we used to get hidings and then like compare marks, see who's got the biggest mark. And then whoever had the biggest like mark, like Fusi Ba'u mark, yeah, you're the strongest, my bro. You're the strongest. And that's what I always tell people, like nowadays, like you can mock me all you want, you know, people will try to say things to hurt you. I'm like, Tola, it's not a Fusi Ba'u to my neck, bro. It's not a Fusi Ba'u to my face. I'm doing sweet, bro. It's all good. Yeah.
But what is it when we get to talk about this like hidings? You imagine other cultures when they're talking about getting hidings, they're like, oh my gosh, so sad. But us, we're going, oh, what did you get hiding with? And we're like laughing about it.
Yeah,
like,
man.
do you think that's therapeutic or it's just part of?
I think it
Just
is.
part of your trauma.
Yeah. I also think it's just part of our competitive spirit, you know, just to see who got the worst one. But damn, that was how bad I go. Damn, now you win, so you win, bro. But I think it's always good to not laugh at your trauma all the time, but when you look at it in hindsight and you realize why you got that hiding, and you're like, yeah, kind of deserved it. Some of them I didn't, but some of them, you know, you're like, yeah, deserved that, and that was quite funny. So, yeah, I think for us, it's because it's our shared lived experience.
Yeah.
We can talk about it, we can laugh about it. But I think for other people, when they look in and hear about hidings, they're like, man, that's abuse. I'm like, oh, that's taking it far there, man. That's taking it a bit too, like, you're stretching the book there. Even though, you know, that might be the reality for some people. But my own personal experience, I was naughty. Yeah, talk back a lot.
I have a theory. That kind of aligns with that. I remember being at a school on placement when I was in my studies, and I remember there was I was in a class where there weren't many islanders, and there was an islander girl. She would have been about year 6, so maybe 10 years old. Real quiet, withdrawn. And then one day she just came up to me and she was like, "Are you Samoan?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Did you get a hiding?" And then that was how we opened up. We started talking about the hidings we got. And I feel like as much as we part of it is we can laugh about it and like that's our way of kind of like taking the edge off. But I think there's something therapeutic about like knowing that we're not the only ones that went through it. Like, like you were saying about that shared connection is like, cool. Like I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. Nothing's wrong with me. Everyone gets hidings, or at least you know I found someone else that also got a hiding.
Absolutely.
And so I was curious because I remember they being asked like, oh, you know, did you learn your lesson like after you got a hiding? So I was like, what's the biggest lesson you learned from a hiding that you got?
There's a lot. I've got a long list. Damn.
We got time. We got
A lot of hidings to remember too. I think one of the most important ones was just like learn to compose yourself, you know, and don't embarrass your family around you. Like, because there was one time there was a big fungal going on. We're in like a Fale Samoa. I'm pretty sure we're in Fiji, and one of the boys was like, "I dare you to like put on a coconut bra and dance by that pole." And mind you, all the koi ingas, all the 5 hours are sitting around in a circle having a very serious meeting, probably about something to do with like this place that we're at. So I get up and I start doing this like girly dance on the pole, and my dad looks over, and then all the 5 hours look over, and my mate's like, "You got to do it for another 2 minutes, bro." So I keep going. I just keep dancing away. You know, I thought it was the funniest stuff ever. Finishes, we get home, baddest hiding of my life, man, massive hiding. And my dad's like, "I'm not giving you a hiding because what you did was stupid. You just made everyone else look stupid. You made your whole family look silly." Like, so you have to always remember that you carry your family name wherever you go. And when you're doing silly stuff like that, like just being an idiot, brings your family name down. And I remember that, like, yeah. She's like, "Yeah, okay, no more coconut bras, Dad." And he's like, that's not besides the point, you know, just try and remember that any actions I take or anything I do has consequences on not only myself, but also my family.
Yeah. And you learned that at 22.
24? No. I was young. I think I would have been like 11 at the time. So I was like, oh, I was just being a kid, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Man, that almost it sort of makes me think there's, because I'm still learning about the culture, but it makes me think there's also then it's almost a double-edged sword, having the expectation of not embarrassing your family, but then this expectation to live up to maybe a family legacy, expectations, things like that. So that must be tricky to, or I don't know, maybe it isn't, but in terms of that double-edged sword of expectations, your own family's expectations, do you ever feel pressure?
Yeah. Expectations is oh man, we can go on that for ages, you know, because everybody knows when you're like 5, your parents are like, "Oh, policeman, be a lawyer, be a doctor," you know, but I think a lot of my family, like my siblings and stuff, none of us went into those roles because we just don't really want to do that stuff, you know. So For me, the expectation was to always just like be the best. My dad was like, "You're great at speaking. You should be a lawyer." So he was very disappointed when he found out that I wanted to be a chef. I was like, "Man, I really want to be a chef." And he's like, "Why would you stand on like your feet for 12 hours making food for other people?" And I remember at the time, like, wow, just crap on my dreams. And like, sure, bro, thanks. But I feel like the expectation just always remains. I've just learned how to numb it. Like, that's nothing to do with me. That's your expectation of me. I have my own expectations of myself. So yeah, like I think a lot of people want me to do like stuff that makes them happy. Do church music, do reggae music, go be an actor, go be a lawyer, whatever. But my expectation of myself is more important than my family's expectation of me. So if I, do well on my own, I'll do well for my family. If I try to live up to their expectations, I might do terribly because I'm miserable. And then in turn, it's just going to go downhill. So yeah, expectations, funny one.
Gee. Imagine if you did take on board Dad's expectations in terms of, hey, being a lawyer. And imagine that because I think we took on early on at the back there. Some people were like, in terms of your music and the reggae style, your bilingual usage of English and Samoa. People would have said, "Oh no, you need to do this. This is the best style. This is the genre you need to be focusing on." Imagine that, because it's kind of like it's something different also in terms of the music industry and your reggae and your bilingual skills. Has there been a time where you feel like, man, I may have to change because this may not be working out?
Every day. I think a lot of artists specifically, every day you fight with like the uncertainty of your art, because you're like, man, this could be great, and then by nighttime you're like, this sucks. Like, no one's gonna listen to this. So, like, for a good example, my latest song, Siva Mai, I didn't want to drop it because it's on an Afrobeat. Afrobeat doesn't really belong to Samoans. It belongs to the Africans and, on that side of the world. So for me, I was like, this is a big jump. And so to put Samoan lyrics on here and to just be unapologetically Samoan, even with the music video, for me, I was like really nervous. And shout out to my bro Samson Rambo, who really helped me out through that whole process of the music video. He always told me, like, just be yourself also. Like, if that's what you like and that's what you want to do, then like push that. And people will either appreciate it or hate it, but that's just the nature of the game. They'll like it or they'll hate it. And you can't do anything about it because you can only control what you do and, your reaction and what you want in life. So, yeah.
Jeez, I like it. Thank you for saying that, because imagine, brothers, imagine people out there who maybe whatever aspirations or goals they're having, and they're kind of doing things, or whatever line of work they're doing it, but they had, they felt like, man, this is what I really want to do, and this is what I should have stuck to my guns, and because I didn't stick to my guns, and now I'm doing this, I feel miserable. Imagine, I'm just thinking, how many men out there are doing things, or in a position, or in a place, or at a workplace, where they're like, man, I should have just stuck to my guns, I should have just done it. And I love that you said, hey, regardless of what people think, yep, I'm still going to stick to my guns and follow through.
Hell yeah. I think it's, and to be honest, you've really got to want it. You've got, if you want that change, you've got to commit to it, because it's being said all the time. It's not an easy road. People say that all the time. If I use my radio journey as a good example, I was going through a lot of issues, my family life at that time. So I moved into my grandparents. I was living with them. And I quit my job. I was working warehousing, at that time, but I was just unhappy. I couldn't like control my emotions. And I remember listening to like Nate and Nixon on my FM around that time. I'm like, this must be easy. Sounds like heaps of fun. This will be easy. And so I applied for the day after I applied for two places. I applied for the Navy and I applied for the radio. And okay, whichever one accepts me first, I'll go there. Because I had just kind of reached, like, didn't know what to do. I was tired of my life. So I was like, cool, Navy probably seems easy. I could probably go there. Or let's just try something out the gate. Let's just go radio. And radio reached out to me first. The radio school down in Tauranga. So I went down there for 6 months. And yeah, my life changed the moment I drove down. But I remember the phone call to my dad, the conversation with my grandparents. My grandpa was like, Tola, I came over from Samoa, gave my kids an education. They're going to go talk on the radio. He was a bit disappointed. He was supportive, but he was just like, are you sure? Like, is this what you want to pursue? My dad, same response. My mom, supportive all the time. You can do it, son. I was like, oh, thanks, mom, love you. But everyone else was kind of like, they weren't vocal about their support. They were just like, yeah, I guess, like, go do your thing. And so for them to see my journey in radio coming through, you know, the only reason I wanted to do radio was firstly because I thought it was easy. Secondly, I wanted to figure out how to get my own music onto the radio. And, you know, now many years later, I think 3 years later now, I'm on the radio. I'm on the morning show. I make music. My music plays on our radio station. Is that cheeky? Yes, it is. But I worked hard to get there, you know. So when people were like, man, you're really blessed. I was like, we worked really hard to get there, you know. So, and I didn't do it alone, but I did have to like make that hard decision first. And then everyone else slowly supported me and, you know, yeah.
Yeah, what a story. What a journey thus far, bro. What, 3 years? Did you say 3 years?
Oh, it might be 4, but you know, you kind of forget after 21, all the years after that.
Like the mentality shift, like, because you know, when you're at rock bottom, there's like, man, there's nowhere lower you can go. So it's like win or lose, and so you're gonna, you know, go all in.
You have to, yeah. You
And-
do.
And then you got this mindset, like, even though people are not ready for you, it's like, man, I don't care. Like, what else are you gonna do now? And just to see, like, you stuck to your guns and things where you're at now. Like everyone, again, we've had many guests come on here, and they have they excel in a certain area. But when you listen to their story, man, like everyone sees this glamorous side, but no one knows the whole process and the struggle that you went through. So it's so cool to hear your story also. And
Thank you,
man, but you're just getting started. I feel like you're just getting started. Like there's so much more.
Well, I think for me, and I'll give the story full context, right? And I'll be vulnerable with you guys for a moment. Before I started radio school, I was going through a divorce. So, as a lot of young islanders do, they get someone pregnant, then they're like, you're gonna have to marry them, like, you know. So, I ended up getting married, and not because I was forced to, but I think at that time I was just blindly in love. I was like, I want to be with this woman for the rest of my life, you know. So we got married, we had a kid, and then we found out that we could not communicate with each other, and so we divorced. And when I divorced, like, I always told myself, like, my kids should only have one dad, one mom. So my mindset at the time was just rock bottom. I was like, no, my daughter needs to go with her mom to make sure whoever, you know, she's going to date next is going to be her dad. And so I was kind of in this toxic circle of putting myself down. I'm like, not a good enough dad, not a good enough man. And so the shift to radio for me was everything had to change from like being stuck in a room for about 2 weeks, feeling sorry for myself. I realized that that's not no good will come from that. I'll just end up doing that for another, 10 years, if anything. So I told myself, like, I will use my divorce as fuel to motivate and, get myself disciplined into something that I really want to try and do. And what else can I do? I'm at the bottom. I can't go any lower. So, keep pushing forward. And so, yeah, I know a lot of people, when they get into those positions, they go to a really dark place. I'll be honest, I went to that dark place too. And so I think when I was there, I realized, like, this is not the right way to go. So let's pivot and let's, find a solution to this issue. Otherwise, it's going to be, hey, we never met.
It's good.
Shucks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that also. Like, shucks. Didn't even know. And a young man being vulnerable about something that just happened not so long ago. And still, still working through it. So shout out to you also.
Thank you, bro. And for me, like, telling that story, it still continues. Like, me and my daughter's mom have a great relationship now. Back then, horrible. We didn't know how to communicate. And over time, we've learned, with the help of our daughter, to make peace, which is fitting because her name is Serenity. So, we've managed to find our peace with each other, and we've been able to become really good friends again. So for me, like, it worked out. I used the divorce to become a better person, and now that I feel like I'm a better person, everything kind of came back around. My relationship with my daughter's mom worked out. My relationship with my dad, my relationship with my grandparents getting better. Just my relationship with my friends, which I've learned in that time how important it is to look after your friends and to keep, your circle, well, small. Keep it small. Yeah.
Do you feel it was like it was just meant to be? It was like fate, in terms of obviously it's sad to sit here about the divorce, but in terms of radio,
Yeah.
do you feel like it was destined? You were destined to be in that kind of space, in that workplace.
No, I don't think it's destined. I think I just manifested it enough to the point where I knew that like I could really do something there. I think I wanted to be either an actor or an astronaut or a chef. So radio and music were kind of on the tail end of what I really wanted to do. And so doing that stuff now, I'm really glad. I'm really glad I went through all the hardships and the 3,000 jobs, to get there.
So many, all your dreams like all very different from it. Chef, astronaut, and what was that one? Radio.
No, actor. I wanted to be an actor, yeah.
Cool. What were? Why so random, or like any of these stuff like connected with you? Or?
I thought aliens were watching me when I was like 6. That's why I wanted to be an astronaut. I was like, I didn't go find these guys. They're gonna fussy, because I used to be in the shower and I'm like, man, somebody's watching me. And then I'd read those books and it's like, if you feel like you're being watched, because there's aliens are looking at you. I'm like, oh, damn it. So for a good portion of my childhood, I wanted to be an astronaut because I wanted to go find the aliens. And then, doing heaps of White Sunday throughout all of my childhood, I was like, man, I'll be a mean actor because I always play Jesus. I was mean as, So you grow up and you realize, oh, well, White Sunday acting and theatre acting, it's very different.
Yeah, man. White Sunday's here. White Sunday's here.
I was just like, oh, shucks, So I kind of slowly moved into wanting to be a chef, and that's just because I like eating. And also, like, I grew up really poor, and my dad wasn't like that. My mum wasn't like hearing that either, but we grew up quite poor. There's a lot of days where there wasn't a lot of food in the pantry. And one of my favorites dinners was like, just toasting Loki. So my goal at that time was like, I want to be so good at cooking that I can make some really good food out of anything that's in this pantry. So yeah, I used to just like go look at the pantry, like breadcrumbs, oh yeah, flour, oh yeah, I can make just pancakes, but I'll make them really good. So that was my mindset for a long time, and over time it just changed. Yeah, with my circumstances, as my living circumstances, and my reality. Yeah.
Shuttles.
Yeah.
I know.
I might move from music at some point too. Never know.
Because we even touched base on your voice as well. Because you can sing, bro. You can sing.
I mean, when there's someone standing there with a fushba'u in their hand, suddenly your voice becomes angelic. Suddenly it's like, so how are we doing harmonies? Yo, rugby player or something. Wait, do soprano. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, no, I think I've always, and I don't want to blame one person, but I've always been told that like, your voice is not that good. Your voice is not that good. So I always try to like prove it to myself. Like, nah, my voice is mean, So over time, I'm trying to find my voice, my singing voice, my just speaking voice and things like that. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
I
hope it does sound good, so I can stop using autotune. I still get flamed for it. It's only like at 70%. Leave me alone.
But also in terms of the music and the bilingual, I always get back to the bilingual because I think it's quite interesting, and your voice. What have been some of the inspiring factors in terms of artists and influences in terms of as to why you've kind of gone down this path in terms of the reggae and all the other eclectic genres that you've kind of Afrobeats and all that kind of stuff? Tell us who kind of influences you.
Everything, man. I listen to everything. Japanese music, Korean music, Spanish music. Love Spanish music. I think for me, like a real pivotal moment that I can remember is when the 1-4 Boys came out. I was studying radio at the time, so it was my goal to like listen to every new song as it came out. I try to listen to all the songs on the day it dropped. And during that time, 1-4 was like they just popped off. And so I was like, man, these Brown Samoan boys doing like real hardcore drill rap, and they're doing it in their Australian accent. I'm like, man, this is cool. And then that whole wave came out. You had the HP boys, and they started using uso in their song. Lisi as well. I'm like, man, if they can do it, I can do it too. And so slowly, as I was writing my music, I start incorporating my language into Samoan language into it. And just over time, it's all changing. And everyone, you can hear it in a lot of music now. People try to use their language, even if it is one word like teine or like uso. It's always good because it just takes that for the next person to add 2 words, and then over time, which the collective goal is to make island music like mainstream, Because to us, I feel like we're mainstream because I listen to all of our island music on New FM. But if you look at stations like the big stations, should I name drop them? Sure. Edge, My FM, all of those like top 40 pop stations, they don't play as much like Pacific music that we would like to, so it'd be nice for, Pacific music to be considered like mainstream, or for it to be easier to get into there. Because, when you think of mainstream Pacific music, you think of our big dogs like Te Waka, Fiji, Spawn Breezy, all of those boys, Aradna. So, yeah, I think the goal is just to try and incorporate language wherever you can, however you want. And over time, it'll change. It might not happen in our generation, might not happen in our kids' generation, but it might happen the generation after. But as long as there's a gradual change, like my parents used to always tell me, slowly but surely.
It's good, bro.
Wins the race.
It's good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Man, something cool about that. Like Korean music is like probably my favorite genre of music, and there's something about it that like I just think the way they've been able to get the culture out through the music, like it made me want to learn the language. And then I got to the point, like before I even started wanting to learn about Samoan and Maori culture, like I was learning more about Korean culture because that just the music got me, and then I was like all these other facets of the culture was just fascinating to me. And as I've started to learn about like my own culture, I realized, like you mentioned earlier, there are some really interesting parallels between the two. But I just think it's really cool that you're able to do what they're doing for their culture, but through your own music and that. Yeah. And I was curious about, I can see how working at the radio and being a musician, there's a natural sort of link there. But I'm curious about if there's any downsides to having that connection. Like, are there ways that like radio work sometimes interferes with your work as a musician, or vice versa?
There definitely is ways. However, I'm pretty blessed in the sense that like I've been able to do both simultaneously. And anytime I stop doing music, it's not because the radio gets in the way. I just get lazy, and sometimes you need a break from your creative stuff so that your stuff's always fresh. I'm going to use Sam as an example. He creates every single day. I always see him. He's writing new stuff all the time, Sam V. And, for me, there's people like that. And then there's other people like myself where I need sometimes 3 months. Had enough. Let me have a quick break, get back to life, go to the gym, listen to an audiobook, It's just sometimes it's all about balance, and no one really gets balance right, So, yeah, I don't think it clashes too much. I've been pretty fortunate, though, with my job specifically and my career so far. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, how about in the radio sense also, in terms of being a radio broadcaster and also a DJ on the radio station? Obviously, obviously, like what Jay was saying, there's some upsides in terms of the music industry and also kind of playing your music on the airwaves and so forth. But the scrub for us, because I know we talked earlier on, because it can be quite, because you said, hey, I can be like Nixon and Nate. It's easy.
Yeah.
And so when you started the job and you started getting into the industry, you said it wasn't easy. It's not what it's
definitely not what you think it is. It's a lot of people think it's you jump on the mic and start talking, but there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of things you got to remember, like just your responsibility to firstly, just the people that you represent, and also like your company that you work for, and then also your own personal morals, So to me, I think that's quite a heavy load to carry, because that's at the forefront of every radio presenter. That's their main job. And then you just have in the industry in general, not just radio, but just kind of the creative industry, you've also got to learn how to deal with egos and people who aren't as self-aware as you'd like. So like I mentioned earlier, radio has been my best job and also my worst job, because you're dealing with a lot of egos and people that you might not necessarily like, but for the product, you have to care. You have to try and care sometimes, but people always think like, nah, they're going to keep it real. They're going to keep it real. You can keep it real as much as you want. Sometimes you need the paycheck, and take that how you want. But there's some people who you might not want to deal with who are really important. So you have to learn how to deal with really conflicting characters. Yeah.
Are you talking about your co-hosts?
Yeah, Regan. Nah, I'm just talking about in general, like, throughout the whole industry. Yeah, I'm really lucky with my team. My team's pretty good, So I'm lucky to be working with them. They're great.
How do you process all that? A lot of the emotional burden. Is that the right term?
Yeah, I guess so. Personally, and I will only speak for myself, I just remind myself at the end of the day, I'm just doing my job, you know. Whether I'm doing it good or doing it bad, I'm just doing my job. And I try to work on it as much as I can away from it and also with my mentors. But for anyone who wants to say anything bad, say it. Like, it might help me be better, but also, like, you're not paying my rent. So say what you want. At the end of the day, I'm learning. You're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. So, yeah, the emotional burden, I've kind of learned to just kind of chuck it. When I leave the office, finished. Come back in the next day, new set of problems. There's problems every day. So just learning about how to deal with problems better.
Man, are we talking about, like, after every show, there's a bit of an evaluation in terms of how your performance and all that kind of stuff? Or?
Nah, no way. But I think just in general, like, there's emotional burden sometimes, you know. And it is like sometimes on radio you do need to be vulnerable, and sometimes you do need to be a little bit emotional so that people can relate with you. And sometimes it's like it can be a bit scary to talk about things. So, you know, if there's something you want to bring up that's quite personal, you got to be careful not to overshare, because that's like a lot of people listening to your story, and they might be like, I don't agree with this person, I'm going to find the house. You know, or I don't, you know, I really agree with this person and I really appreciate that they've shared their journey. So there's always two sides of the coin. We don't really, you know, talk about it in studio, but I feel like a lot of the presenters will go away, go home, you know, they're resting and they're like, man, maybe I shouldn't have said that today, you know. And I think that's normally what they have to deal with by themselves, and they can talk to their co-hosts, and depending on who you work with, it could be really good, you know, a really good journey. It could be a really terrible journey.
How do you safeguard yourselves in that? Because, like you said, you know, there might be some times when you go back home and like, man, I shouldn't have said that. Do you guys have any protocols, processes, or?
I think it comes down to just being good mates, and I'm only talking specifically on my show. Like, if you're good mates outside of your show, then you can you know, be rest assured that, like, when you are being vulnerable on the station, you know that your co-host will look after you. You know, so. Yeah, not so much like protocols like meetings and stuff, but it is always good to check in on your co-host. Just like it's good to check up on your friends, because you never know what they're going through. You know, so someone might be talking about something and then they get personal and you're like, oh, Tolo, you right there, mate? Gee, or you want to grab a coffee, Leos? Yeah, so yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's always interesting working with other people. Obviously, when you're working only on your own, you know, you only have to worry about yourself and you can kind of let things slide and whatever. But even the best of friends have disagreements.
Of course.
So how do you manage having disagreements, especially, you know, in a job where things are moving forward and it's not just you two, but other people are listening in? Like, have you ever had times where you've kind of disagreed and then in the moment you just had to like suck it up and try and not let it bother you too much?
Yeah. I think there's always a lot of disagreements on like a daily basis. I want to say there was a disagreement today. I'll use today as an example. Actually, I was as a Samoan, we mock each other, you know, and I was mocking one of my co-hosts on here, and I might have pushed a bit too far, you know. And so they let me know. They'd sent me a text. They're like, "Hey, look, I think you did just a bit too much today." So for me, I'm like, okay, I'll take my responsibility and I'll apologize, you know. And I'll see them tomorrow and be like, look, I'm really sorry. I thought it was really funny at the time. You hadn't said anything, so I kept pushing. And so for me, like, yeah. Just be nice to your friends. Know when to stop. Yeah.
And there's a good, healthy relationship that someone can, when they're not happy or you push too far, that they can text you and even on your end, like knowing, oh shucks, I don't realize, or because this is all part of growth and developing as a team. And
and I believe, like, anyone who I call like my friend, I would hope that they would find me approachable enough to say, like, hey, dude, you screwed me over today. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, because if I'm not held accountable, how am I going to know? So I'm glad that I'm surrounded by people who like remind me of like my downfalls, because, you know, sometimes you get so carried away on your journey that, like, I'm doing everything great, I'm doing sweet, that you forget that you can hurt people's feelings without intending to. And so it's important to look after those relationships.
It's good, man. It's good role modeling as well. You know, you could have been defensive and say, this is just a joke, man. Come on, man. Get over it. But it's cool that you kind of take ownership and say, hey, man, you're sorry, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, what was it? What was the
It's just gonna make it worse.
There must be some times though where you're like, bro, it wasn't that bad. Like it just in your mind, but then for the greater good and for the sake of the relationship, or do you always just you don't own up to it unless you feel, or
Well, just the relationship I have with my friends and stuff, it's always like if they have to bring it up, then I know I've pushed it too far. But for the most part, they know intentions are always good. Intentions are always good. It's always, let's see you can get the funniest joke in. So if I'm ever getting a message like, hey, look, that wasn't cool, it just means that I've pushed it too far. But for the most part, like, I never think that like, man, shucks, I shouldn't have done that. Because I know for the most part, they're happy, they're good, So to get that message today, I realized like, okay, there's that line. Try not to cross it next time.
No, that's good.
have you ever been on the flip side where someone said something that's sort of triggered or kind of like,
Heaps of times.
yeah,
Heaps of times. And just I think the way that I am, I'll only bring it up if I feel like I really need to. Besides from that, I'm like, I'll suck it up. I've had hidings before. It doesn't bother me that much. But yeah, I think it's important to call out, and not necessarily just in workplace, but I think in our family lives too, and our friends, when people hide disrespect as jokes. Because you can always feel the intention of somebody's jokes.
Yeah.
And it's something someone's do all the time. We just joke. We see he's got the funniest joke. You always know when someone's saying, like, disrespecting you in a joke. You can just feel it. So it's always important, like, once you feel that, call it out. Or just let them know, like, nicely, somewhere quiet, like, hey, you're being a rude dude for doing that, bro. So, yeah, I think I'm lucky enough that I can take a joke, even if it's quite bad. But yeah, once it comes through as a form of like pure disrespect, just say something.
It must play on your psyche. Hey, also, not just you, but in terms of if we do, like, I don't know, we may cross that line, and then you feel like, oh man, I can't really joke around this guy anymore or around this person anymore. I just, especially on radio, also in terms of like, oh, I can't really say this joke, or I have to be very cautious this time around. Does it play on your psyche in terms of sharing your jokes now? Or?
Not so much psyche, but you learn to be a bit more careful, So if you realize that that's somebody's line, you just got to respect that's their line. You can't go over that line. And I think it's just about having good enough relationships with people that okay, cool, that's how far I can go. Let's not push past it, because you got to, you have to respect them. That's as much as they can handle.
It's good.
It's good, man.
Yeah. I resonate with her heaps because, man, I've been last out. And we're a school of mockers, bro. So you get like
thick skin,
thick skin, and sometimes when you're, mocking, but it's good intent. Like it's never malicious. You never like mock the obvious, I guess. But
but they
you get carried away. But
my
thing is, like, I've learned, like, over the years that I've appreciated people that have like pulled me up on it, and then I'm like, okay, sweet, sorry, it's my boundaries. I never meant to hurt you like that. For me, it's like what gets me a bit sad or angry is that when I hear other people that come up to me and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that, or like someone that wasn't even there said this person has gone and told someone else, people, or called up people, or have cut me off, or never raised the issue with me, but all good to go tell someone else about it. And that's where I find that, like, oh, shucks.
Do you reckon that's just disrespectful? Or do you think they just like didn't have the balls to come and talk to you man to man or person to person?
I don't know, eh? It's either, I don't know, because I feel like if I'm in a good relationship with someone, man,
talk to me.
Come talk to me, like, and you know my heart, like, and so I always like think, oh, you must be going through something, or there's probably been an issue that's been there for a long time, and then what I said was like what do you call it, the straw on the camel's back, you know, and so it was like a Chris Rock, Will Smith moment. But then when it never gets addressed with me, it's like, oh shucks, you know me, like I would never do anything that would like really hurt you. So yeah, I found that, but that's something I'm having to learn too. Like, okay, I gotta make sure I'm careful with what I'm saying. And this episode's not supposed to be about me, but I really
but I think you're right.
It's a conversation, man.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, and so one of the things I've learned, like, you know, doing things like that is understanding that people are allowed to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with it, you got to let them, like, well, that's how you feel. Well, I'm sorry, that's how you feel. It's not my intention. Some people don't, like, yeah, what are you feeling like that for? That's not what I mean. You know, now you've been a suki bubble. So it's just kind of, you know, understanding that people are allowed to, you don't have to validate it, but they're allowed to feel however they feel on the certain situations.
And we need to normalize, like, just, man, putting you up for it. Like,
say it to my face, bro.
Say it to my face.
Because if you're going to tell
telling
the other
else,
guys,
that's where we have a problem, man. Like, you don't want the smoke.
I went to last
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was going to ask, like, how do you pull someone up on that? Because me personally, I've always been the type to, I'll either go too far because it's just a defense mechanism because I don't want the attention on me, and like, or I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Like I'll try and break it neutrally, but then go away, and I'm like, bro, stuff that guy. Like, but then I'll let it fester in my head.
I'm sorry,
because I don't know how. Like, but then like I don't know anyone that's called, or at least I've never seen it personally where someone's called someone and be like, hey, bro, that's not cool. Yeah. So I've always just been curious, like, how does that? I don't know. Is there a scenario that you can think of where that's happened, or how do you even start to call? Because I'm always worried about being like, bro, you got offended, bro. You're soft, G. So I think that's part of why I've always been hesitant to like speak up, even though I know a joke's like, bro, that's not on. But I'm just like, oh nah.
Yeah.
Scenarios wise, I'm still learning that. I'm still learning that with like people around me. I can only speak on like my relationship with my siblings. I pull them up all the time, and I'll just text them. I'll text them or just give them a call. Let them say what they want to say, and I'll be like, actually, you're just being a sook. Actually, you're wrong here, you know. So for me, if it does come down to that, just set them aside somewhere private, you know, or just give them a phone call, one-on-one, have that conversation. And I've even been lucky enough to have a conversation similar like that to my mom, you know. So talking to my mom and letting her know, like, Mom, that's not cool, Mom. You know, that's kind of maybe try a different approach, you know. And so had I never told her, she might have never known. You know? So for me, I always would rather have a one-on-one conversation with a person if I feel like something's needs to be addressed. Yeah. Which I think, honestly, that's probably the normal approach. Anyone who calls you out in front of everyone else, attention seeker, you know, or they just want to show like, yeah, big dog, you know, which I don't. Some cases maybe it's needed, but for the most part, just, you know, take them to the side somewhere, talk to them one-on-one first. Try to resolve the problem like that.
It's good. I agree. I think, you know, sometimes it is best to kind of put them to the side and say, hey, man, that's not cool, bro. Yeah. But I've had instances where people have done it for me in public. Like they've fucking barred me or shamed me in public. Oh, and that's when, you know, for me personally, I think, man, if you're going to shame me publicly, you know what? You're going to get it publicly. Yeah. You know, because it's not cool. You know, and so, yeah, if you're going to do like, you know, you have these conversations and do something and think, oh, that's going a bit too far, then I'll pull you to the side, hey, bro, not cool. And I've lived by that. I've had instances of people saying, oh, just say something, some rule. And you know, like you're saying, like what you're saying, Jay, you know when the energy changes, when it's like, oh, this guy's not joking now, this guy's trying to hurt me or trying to, so you know the energy. So if they're going to pull you up like that, bro, for me personally, man, just you tell them straight up and publicly. If they're going to do publicly, you tell them publicly.
Run it, same energy.
Yeah, and so it's not cool. Let them know because, you know, because if you don't do that, they think, oh, sweet, I can just keep doing it. Yeah, but for the most part, yeah, I think it's always good just to put them to the side. Yeah. So let's just run it tomorrow. Run it straight, bro.
I'm just trying to like because I'm a youth worker by trade, and I remember my first year in high school. Working in the high school, and I remember someone was taking me a tour around the school, and I'm new, and then I remember these kids, they were like all around in a group, and they saw me walking past, and they go, "Oh, hey, what's up, Stoney?" And I was like, "Oh," but all those boys are laughing, like, "Yeah, you smoke with your dad," and then everyone go, "Whoa!" And he almost like was gonna kangi, and I was like, yeah, then come back. So I was thinking about that. Were you talking about those kids that you were teaching? So they're only kids, man.
It's the same kid.
The same kid. Sorry, shucks. Telling all these stories that I put away, thought I was healed from, and
That's what it's about. I want to hear all the stories, bro. You know? So podcasts for share the stories.
oh man, it's cool having these conversations because of some of these stuff that part of our upbringing, but shucks, we haven't really talked about it much, eh? And so it's cool. Hey, with radio, when you said like you thought it was easy, how'd you find it? Like when you did get into it?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. When I was out in school, so I'm like trying to sneak here. When I was out in radio school, I remember the teacher was like, "Can't talk like that. You can't talk like." Because I used to get on the radio because we had a fake radio station down there, and so we used to jump on. We had like a hour show that you had to do by yourself, and I used to get on, be like, "Ashay, what's going on? Ashay, what's going on? This big Azza here. Like, you're listening to this radio station. Here's a song by 1-4, and I play all the songs I like." And I remember the principal sat me down and he goes, "The most important thing about radio is communication. So you cannot speak like that." And I remember just being like, "Oh, so I have to talk like, 'Good morning, welcome to this radio station where this is the next song playing.'" And so I was lucky enough that I had Nixon's number, Nixon from YFM, and I remember I called him and I was like, "Hey, look, can you be my mentor type thing? This is what my principal's telling me." And he was like, "Don't listen to that guy. Radio stations don't hire you because you're good at speaking. They hire you for your character." And from then on, I realized like, I'm just gonna say "eshe" whenever I want, even if I fail a paper, because they listen to you, they air check you. And when I told him, I stopped saying "eshe," but I just try to speak more, just sound like myself instead of trying to sound like a radio jockey. I actually got better. The principal also agreed. He was like, "Man, you're sounding a lot better," and it's just simply on that, just being myself. And so it was hard at first, trying to learn the rules, and then when I learned them enough that I could break them, it became fun, became easier. So now, I'm lucky I'm at a place where they allow us to try push our boundaries a little bit more, have a bit more fun on the station. So yeah, radio, what I thought was easy, was hard. Now it's kind of, just second nature.
It's good, man.
Yeah.
What's so special about UFM to you?
Man, it's very simple. This is my boss. Shout out my boss, Louis. When I left radio school, they're like, "Here's all the contacts. Up to you to get a job." And at that point, I was working construction. I was like, I don't want to do construction. I don't want to do part-time. I want to do radio full-time. And so I approached 3 different places. I won't say where. But the other 2 places were like, yeah, we'll get you on. Also, we'll get you on. Come work on the streets. Do the street team stuff. I'm like, cool. And New FM gave me a spot on the weekends. I'm like, man, I'd rather just do the weekends. I'll just do that. So I was working construction during the week, and in the weekends I'd do radio. And over time, they started giving me more shifts. And then one day Louis was like, you can engineer in. And I was like, yeah, I know. YouTube, everything. For 2 weeks, I just sat there, and COVID happened. So I was in the office by myself. And then so they're like, you got to do this. And so I was there every day just on YouTube learning how to plug mics and stuff, So New FM will always have a special place in my heart because I grew up listening to Nate and Jandals, and then at that moment in my life when I wanted to become a radio host, it was Nate and Nixon, which reminded me of New FM. So I love that place. I'm allowed to make some cool choices there, some cool decisions. Recently we did something called the Rookie Class Cypher, which is my idea that I've been allowed to bring to life, but pretty much it's just local talent, up and comers, giving them a platform to say these are your up and comers for this year. And so people get to look at that and be like, man, all these kids, they're going to be successful in the next 4 or 5 years, maybe the next 2-3 years. But it's cool to have, a chance for me. I have a place where I can go and create content and give people platforms and just have fun, just listen to our people on the radio too. Yeah. And meet them. I got to meet a lot of my, idols and stuff, and now they're my friends, so it's cool.
Love it, also.
Yeah. Right. Just just a thought came to mind also in terms of your voice. Obviously, you're the voice of of many listeners, people listening, and there's a lot of just impact and influencing those who are listening on especially when you're on your segment. Do you feel any pressure? Well, not pressure, but I think do you feel an obligation to like, oh man, I'm influencing all these people, and there's something that I always have to kind of uphold. Is there some sort of obligation in that sense?
To an extent, sure. Every radio station has a target audience they have to make sure that they're catering to. Personally, I just try to talk to people who are like myself, you know, young dads, and I always just try to be honest to my own conversation, because if by being honest to myself and what my truth is, there's guaranteed a lot of other people in my same position as me. So my duty is just to be myself so that they can relate and be like, man, this guy also got writings, man, that's cool, man. You know, I'm gonna listen to him some more, and that's it. That's my only duty, is just to be honest to myself and with what I'm talking about on radio. Yeah,
it's cool, man. It's kind of like it's kind of like a bit of a duty of care when you're on the radio and so forth. It's just I can imagine just in your mind and your mindset, like you just have to. It's like kind of like a switch, like a button, like you switch on and just there's a persona when you're on the radio.
Kind of, yeah. I've always been told it's best not to have a persona on radio. I've always been told like the best thing you can be on radio is just yourself. But actually trying to be yourself, like have like before we're saying off podcast conversations, trying to have those conversations live on air is one of the hardest things to do, because you feel pressure that people are listening to you. So I'm like, man, I got to sound smart, got to sound good. But honestly, it's just trying to be yourself is kind of the main, I won't say burden, but that's kind of the thing you want to achieve in radio. It's just like to be able to, if we were to remove the mics, what conversation would we have here at this table? Same as radio. You know.
Cool, man. Awesome.
And I remember when Nixon was on, he had talked about being on radio and how it was like, he had mentioned something similar in terms of like being yourself, but he was saying that like on radio, it's like yourself plus GST, like you plus 15%.
Yeah.
Like, but other than that, like you don't really, it's just extra facets of yourself, but like slightly turned up.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, if it sounds like that's kind of what it's like being on air. And then I was going to ask, how do you actually balance everything that you have going on in your life? Because it sounds like you have a lot with parenthood, music, mahi.
Busy.
Yeah, like how do you balance it all out and not burn out?
I've said this before, and I can say it again. I don't balance very well, and I'm still learning how to do it. I'm getting better. I'm getting better at it, but I think, you know, there's a certain time when you just overcommit, and a lot of the times it's to your mates, you know, so you're just like, shucks, what did I say I was going to do? I'm going to say yes to that, you know, so when it comes to balance itself, I think people always say prioritize, but honestly, I wouldn't be able to give good advice on balance because I don't do it very well. So if anyone else has good advice on balance, please let me know, because I just work, sometimes sleep for 3-4 hours, which is bad, miss the gym, you know, forget to pick my kid up sometimes. So there's a clear indicator as the balance is off, very off.
Yeah.
But I'll figure it out soon, bro. You know, ask me in about 5 years.
Remember those days? Getting the call. Did you pick up my son? Okay. What?
I'm on my way.
Oh yeah. I'm almost there, and I'm just leaving the place that I'm. So yeah, don't feel. Balance, you'll figure it out. What works for you, and you're just in the season of grinding, and but also like your contour, man. He's me trying to give someone like you. But yeah, if I'm talking to the young me, like man, you'll find like how important it is to look after yourself. Like looking at ways, because you're on the season of grinding, man, it's easy to get burnt out, and you don't want to be that guy that has the oh my gosh, what's that term? That straw on camel's back, like something might happen to you, or but you'll figure it out. And cause Pete, I always call Pete and ask for advice, and he's such a grinder, hustler, and he's given me some of the good advice to slow down, Eels. Nah, you haven't, Wait
for the ticks.
This might sound random, but I've always found that because I'm the same, bro. Like I struggle, overcommit all the time, like imbalance, sometimes burnout. But I've always found that, at least maybe it's just me justifying to myself why it's like, oh no, all good. But like we all have our own rhythm of chaos. Like everyone's rhythm to life is different, and like the way that you do it, no one can do it the way that you do
That's
it.
true.
But you found a way to make it work, even though it may look imbalanced to others. It balances for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you find a way to balance it. At least that's what I'm telling myself to say. You're
Nah,
all
that's-
good.
that's
Keep
perfect.
going.
Yeah,
keep
no.
But
grinding,
you know,
keep hustling.
you just saying that just made me realize, like, I said something like trying to encourage him, but I realized, oh man, wait, everything's quite chaotic at the moment. And so what you said was like made so much sense in terms of like all our rhythm of, what did you say again?
Rhythm of life or rhythm of chaos.
Chaos,
Chaos. Yeah, it's just
Controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos. Yeah. That's really good. Thank you. Yeah.
See, he didn't
That's
say
a big
thank you
gym,
to
man.
me.
Oh, thank you also as well.
He's gonna text you now. He's gonna
Hey, also remember that conversation we had? Not happy.
Wow, that's cool.
something about it, eh? We just like at least for myself, like I just find myself justifying all the time. Like, nah, it's the way it's meant to be, or like things will fall into place. And I don't know if that's like we were talking a little bit about church before and culture. And sometimes in particular with Samoan culture, I remember growing up thinking they were one and the same.
Yeah.
So like I didn't like church, which meant I didn't like Samoan culture, and vice versa. And I don't know if there's like aspects, like do you find, are there aspects to Samoan culture that hold people back or hold yourself back? Or do you think that for the majority of it or all of it, like it's all positive for Samoan culture?
Damn, that's deep, that one. That's real deep. I don't know if I can answer it. I don't know. Like, I don't know if anything holds us back. I think there's old traditions which, you know, a lot of the elderly want us to follow, but it doesn't work in the modern world for us, you know. And so trying to find a way to make it work might hinder the journey, but I think it's different for everyone. If you let it hold you back, it's going to hold you back. Some people thrive with it, you know. And I've seen people who thrive, just do really great. They're Makai and they're a lawyer and they're everything. Like, oh, man, good for you, bro. Like, you know. So for some people, man, you know, having that culture part aspect of their life really pushes them forward. For some, it holds us back. How that looks for you, that's on you and like the decisions you make. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a like particular aspect that holds anybody back, but for me personally, nah, I think I'm all right. Yeah, I try to learn where I can. I'm really lazy sometimes.
And if someone asked you, what's the most beautiful aspect of Samoan culture, what would you say?
Come on now, it's too many stuff, yeah. Way too many stuff. I know Samoa has a really rich language. It's very rich. Yeah, that and just I think the humility side of our culture is really beautiful. Sometimes it can be like, you know, sometimes there's that thing that exists called, you know, toxic humility. But for the most part, we're pretty just, you know, we're good. We're nice and humble. That's what I like. And then, yeah, then the food. And the food. I might have to be honest, the Tongans make some really good food though. So we might lose that one out to the Tongans.
Come on,
Maybe.
Come on,
maybe.
man.
Come on, maybe. Have you seen the way they make fete? Oh, shucks.
Is it?
Amazing.
Oh, wow.
They call it fike. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. Still tastes good.
Yeah. Oh man, it was because you got your hands on so many things, and obviously there's a lot of goals you have. Which one, if you had to choose right now, which one out of those goals that you have going for you, which one would be the one, like, you know what, this is probably the one that's I'm gonna go, and this is the one that's the most important to me?
Sorry. Damn. Maybe music. Music has kind of helped me through dark places, and it's also helped me through, you know, celebrating stuff that I've been proud for. So I might just, if I had to choose one thing, I'd choose music, because I can work from home and wake up at 12 o'clock and work late at night, you know. Whereas radio, you got to wake up at 4:30, 3:30, whatever, to get ready for a 6 a.m. shift. So, yeah.
Bro, awesome, bro. Because I mean, there's a lot of people who have outlandish goals, and like, this is what I want to do. And you have artists who say, man, I want to win a Grammy, I want to do this and that. But what's your goal? What's the ultimate goal for the Western Guide?
Man, I always tell myself this, and my main goal is that whatever I'm chasing, like whatever it is in life, I just want my daughter to know that her dad chased his dream as far as he could. Yeah. And he never gave up. That's my goal in life, is just to do that. Whatever I decide to pursue, whether it's music, whether it's radio, whether it's acting, anything, my main goal is to look back and see my daughter and be like, you know, I tried, so you should try your best too. That's it. That's my main goal in life, is just to, my dad, I hate him, but he tried his best, you know? It was like, no doubt, you know, that saying was like, whatever you do to your parents comes back tenfold worse, you know? So I'm like, yeah, cool. If I was riffing with my dad around my teen years, I'm expecting it to come back around my daughter's older. So I'm like, as long as she knows that her dad chases dreams.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I feel like you're a dream chaser too, and I like how you're involved in heaps of different things, but I don't know. I don't know you personally, but it just feels like, man, this is just the beginning.
Thank you.
It'll be cool to see you in a couple of years and what comes out in terms of like your goals and dreams, and hopefully you keep on pushing, bro. And you know you got someone that's watching you. And
there's aliens, eh? There's aliens.
I hope they never come back, bro. Still there. I can shower in peace now.
But it sounds like whatever you put your mind to, you'll do it. Because, man, just hearing their story about, man, the engineering, you go, yep.
Yeah.
So
it was a nice little cheat, that one.
And then you just go in.
Yeah, I left out the part where I studied music in high school, so I knew how to turn on mics. But I think the engineering side of things, man, there was a whole new like world for me. And so just trying to understand like technical aspects of stuff was so hard. And to this day, I don't call myself an engineer because I don't think I have the right qualifications for it. And I don't think I can like engineer a whole big studio. But to get my foot into the door on the radio, I had to learn just enough about engineering and making commercials that I, was good enough. And then I slowly moved into hosting, which is my original goal. So I think it's always just, the journey changes sometimes, but as long as you have the goal in mind, and as long as you're just hungry and staying focused, then you're sweet. Yeah.
What, is it a matter of like faking it till you make it, or is it like, man, just say yes and then figure it out after?
Both are good, like maybe a nice balanced combination of both. Definitely faked it. I don't think I've made it yet, but I definitely faked it to get into that position. But also, like, when I think about my early days in radio, I was a yes man. Anything, yeah, cool. I'll do that. That way, it was a faster way to learn everything in the business. So you learn the street side of the business, you learn the programming side, the engineering side, the promotional side, and so I was able to learn all of that within like a year and a half, to the point where I'm like, cool, I know radio now. But it's just because I said yes to everything. And sure, I faked it, but I also just like gave it a good shot.
Yeah.
I think
it's really interesting. Because I know some people, myself especially, like, we're prone to say yes, but as people pleasers. But it's just interesting to hear the other side of like saying yes, but for the sake of learning, like just to learn the ins and outs. And you said something really cool before about like it was really hard when you're, hard to learn the rules, but you have a lot of fun when it comes to like bending and breaking them.
Yeah.
So just big ups on just the resilience. You sort of inspired a thought about like, people say some doors open, some doors close. And just seeing your journey, it's clear that some of those doors that were about to close only stayed open because you put your foot in the door, and you made the most of that opportunity. So I just think it's really cool that you've been able to like have the courage to put it out there and then just run with it, and not look back, or maybe look back, but in terms of just reflection, but just really go hard.
Of course, and I think it's important to just try things. And I remember I was listening to you guys in Biola's chat, and there was part of his chat where he was just like, man, he just wants to try and do whatever, just experiment. You might get it wrong, people might think you're mad at it, but if you try it, you never know, you might be great at it. And so like I've been pretty fortunate enough that a lot of the things that I've tried has worked out well, so on top of being a radio host, I do music, I do voice acting as well, I do acting, I've yet to become a rugby player. Maybe I'll get an acting role that allows me to be a rugby player, then I'll be all right. But, I think for me, my main thing is just like, see how it goes. Just give it a crack. I might be great, it might be terrible. And that's just, I think if you take it too seriously, like, oh man, I sucked at it. It's like, yeah, you sucked at it, move on, like next thing. So I think it's important to acknowledge that there might be some things you're not good at, and that's just a reality because you cannot be good at everything. And anyone who thinks they're good at everything, just stuck there, mate.
And is there stuff that you still want to experiment with and try?
Lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff. I still want to try being a chef. You know, I still want to open a restaurant. I might cheat it, want to just get really famous and then, you know, buy a restaurant and then get them to cook for me. But, you know, I still want to be a chef. I gave wrestling a crack last year. Yeah, it was really good. It hurt, but I still want to give that a go as well. Voice acting, still love doing that. I do that on the side, and I'd like to do more of it. Bodybuilding, another side quest. Got really good at it last year, and then I realized it's so much work for almost no return. You know, so yeah, a lot of things, and I'll probably get to it at some point. But right now, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll just do these things that I'm doing now, then move on to something else later on. Yeah, might be a coach one day. Coaching my kids. Why didn't you try?
Yeah. Oh man. Also, man, it has been really, really enlightening. Also, in terms of, and you're very highly motivated, really highly, just real a go-getter. And I think what I'm taking out of our conversation, our Talanoa tonight, is that I love it that you didn't kind of like wave and say, hey man, I might have to change my style, my genre. I might have to stop this bilingual music. And I love it that you said full throttle and said, you know what, I back myself, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to, regardless of the trolls. And you know, you're going to get the trolls regardless. But you back yourself and you're staying in this space. And so, bro, man, Maro lava soy fools.
Thank you, also. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Proud of you, man. Proud of the work you're doing, man. And still young, still such a very, very young man, but very driven. And I think a lot of the listeners and viewers are going to be really inspired and just, man, this guy he's doing some great stuff.
Hey, to anyone who's listening right now, I may seem really driven, but just remember, you're allowed to take days off. Okay, there's days where I'm just like, yep, I'm gonna wake up at 12, watch Netflix, and eat chips in my bed, you know. And there's a lot of days that I doubt my abilities, a lot of days that I have imposter syndrome. My main thing is feel it, you know, allow the emotion to pass through your body. After that, acknowledge what happened, see if it's something you need to work on, move on. Yeah, that's it. That's kind of how I just go about my life, you know. So right now, I'm in like a transitioning phase with everything that I'm doing, and so just evaluating what needs to change so that I can move on and do new things or just be better at what I'm currently doing. Yeah, so every day is different. Every day is not going to be great. Just try to find good things in each day. One highlight every day, surely.
It's cool, man. It's cool.
I love that, the attitude, and I love the chillness about it. Yeah. But I don't know if that's just the way we're conversating in terms of being chill about it, but I just, it's so cool. I think it might be really encouraging for our youngins out there that want to pursue the next, what they want to get into, and you know, the whole area around expectation, man. Yeah. The expectation of being a young person, expectation of being a PK. Yeah. Pastors' kids get it the hardest.
A lot.
Yeah. So many other expectations, but it just seems like a lot of that stuff has really built you to the person that you are today, and like it's really built this. Sounds like it's really built this resilience in you, and it's really exciting because, man, I know I don't want to sound condescending, like, man, you're you're young, but it's cool. Like there's so much more over these next few years that can evolve, and so that's really cool, man.
Thank you so
really
much.
Appreciate, man. This Talanoa is so cool.
If I can quickly touch on like expectations one more time, and this one will be a bit like deep.
Yeah.
If you allow yourself to be consumed by what people expect of you, it could be really bad for your health. So myself, when I was younger as a teen, like I was so consumed in what people thought of myself that I actually realized, like at that point in time, I thought I just wasn't good enough, you know. So to the point that it drove me to like a suicide attempt, and I've had two in my life. The first one very funny. I shouldn't say it's funny, but it's funny when I think about it, because the whole process, like I felt like a victim at the time, but when I look back and think about the problems that I had, it was something really small. And, you know, so when I finally let go of like understanding that I'm not going to live up to people's expectations and the only expectations that should matter is my own, I finally realized that I'll never go back to that place. But, you know, and that's just because I went to those places, that place twice, because I allowed other people's voice and other people's expectations to project on me, and I held it on for too long. So if you're out there and you're feeling alone, and if you're feeling like you aren't good enough, you're feeling like nothing's ever going to work out, just forget what everyone else is thinking, what everyone else is doing. Just focus on yourself. Even if it's just, you know, I used to go on coffee dates alone every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and that helped me slowly change my path into being self-aware, and also just, you know, just figuring out things out. You know, and I don't think anyone's ever fully self-aware, but at least you try. And just be nice to yourselves. Anyone who's listening, just, you know, whether you're 60, 70, it's always good to be nice to yourself.
I know, well said, Us.
Shucks. Thanks for sharing that. It was like, shucks.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry.
I would go into detail, but it'll cause some trigger, because I'll laugh about it. I'll laugh about it as we do. But I would, you know, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Cool. Nah, thanks for sharing that also.
Yeah,
Man, but even to get to that point where, because like people who've gone through stuff like that, you can make peace with it, but then to really make peace with it, where you can laugh about it. Like, I know, like, you know, it can trigger some people, but I just think for you to get to that point where absolute acceptance and like analysis of what led up to it, and then seeing, I'm assuming, like the ridiculous side of it. Like, how could I can't believe I was at that stage where I took on everyone's expectations, and you know, we all know that that's something that sort of, you know, affects people in our community quite a lot. So I know although it's a sensitive topic, I'm really grateful and glad that you were able to come out of it and hopefully find some silver lining in there that's obviously helped influence other aspects of your life.
Yeah, man, because when I have conversations like this with anybody, that always comes up, and it really surprises me how many people have attempted. And I'm like, you never seem like you would have done that. And so for me, like, I know there's this thing about normalizing that conversation, but I always feel like that conversation needs to be had in like on a one-on-one, or like a closed group, or like just between people. Because, you know, you can advocate as much as you want. People in that space don't want to talk to anyone, you know, and they're not going to go listen to something to make themselves feel better. They kind of just want to have a one-on-one conversation with someone who, even if you don't understand, someone who will listen. Because you don't have to understand someone's problem to listen. Just listen and let them speak. Yeah.
Good advice, Us.
That's good advice.
Do you think there's a link between, like, and this might sound like an obvious answer, but do you think there's a link between like expectations and one's ego? I've always just found that, like, when I struggled with people's expectations, or it's like, because hidden inside there's an ego of like, bro, I should be the man. Like, I should be able to carve all of this up, and yet somehow I'm struggling, and I don't know why I can't live up to these expectations, because I feel like on my best day I can absolutely nail it, but not every day is my best day.
Yeah. No, I absolutely think there's a link between, like, having an ego and, you know, telling yourself you can do something, when in reality you should probably tell yourself that you're not that good at it, you know, and then be able to accept that. Yeah. Damn, that's, never thought of that.
Cool.
I just always blamed it on expectations, to be honest. So it's good. It's a nice, like, refresher to hear that.
Yeah, I think I'm still sort of finding my way with it, so I think that's why it sort of came to mind.
Yeah,
But no, that's cool.
because ego is definitely it's a funny topic. Not a lot of people always say ego is bad. I like to think having an ego to a certain extent is good, because it's confidence, right? It's being able to be confident in yourself. And so people sometimes mistaken someone who's really confident in themselves as ego. And so I think there's a certain amount of ego you should possess, so that you can back yourself, you can look after yourself, put yourself in spaces you know that you can be in. And then there's ego that's just like, yep, that's enough, come down. You've had it too much. Yeah. Which actually listening to it. Sounds like tall poppy vibes, but there are some egos that need to be controlled. They get out of control.
Sorry, it was like, don't want to address it, but in terms of like you coming out of those attempts, like what were some of the supports that helped you get out of it? Like, was it more time to reflect, to get away, or were there certain people that help you navigate some of your emotions? Did you seek help?
I seeked help. One time I called one of those helplines.
Yeah.
Terrible. I never did it again. It was like, hold the line, and I was on there for an hour. Someone will be with you soon. I was like, bro, if someone was on the verge of like just collapsing, this is not the thing to do. But both times I kind of had to look after myself, you know, and then later on in the journey, I started to talk to people about it and they helped me out. But immediately after, or like, you know, after the both attempts, I kind of just looked after myself for a bit, just reminded myself like, man, you have a reason to be here. Like, you're solid. I used to say that to myself all the time. Nah, you're solid. Wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, gee, you're solid. You know, and so over time, just those little like affirmations just happened to work for me. You know, I told myself like, man, no one's perfect. Don't listen to anyone. And that was it. Yeah, and that's why when I think back to it now, I'm like, this guy was just having a big cry and just was a bit dramatic. But yeah, that's kind of my journey out of that. Yeah, and then to just understanding how to not actually put too much weight on other people's, you know, expectations on you, just to know that it's there, cool, good for you, you know, got my own expectations to worry about.
Yeah. And even though you look back and you think, man, this guy, you think of like looking at it now, it's like that was small, but in that moment, like our level of crisis is different, it's huge, and so that would have been massive for you during that time. And so whoever's going through some hard times now, you know, this is a perfect example of like, man, if you hold on, you know, if you know there's purpose in your life, that one day when you can look back, you'll be like, oh shucks, I've built this resilience. You know, there's so much. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and there's people there that can support you, and this too shall pass. You know, and so. And man, life's not easy. We'll always have our ups and downs, and
Of course.
And so it's cool that we get to like openly talk about these things.
Yeah. I think it's I don't mind talking about it because I made peace with it. I just know that like when some people listen to it, they're like, Tole, that's a bit insensitive, right? You know? And I'd laugh about it all the time. But I think it is important just to like share that stuff happens, and it's probably happened to someone you love, and it might be someone, you know, you'd probably never guess, but it's definitely happened to people around you. And it's just important to just check in on yourself as well. Like check in on yourself, take yourself on a date. Just go have coffee with yourself. I had a little journal. Used to write like, yo, mean shoes today. Like real silly stuff like that, you know, like, oh man, this coffee sucks. I'm not coming back to this place, you know. And so starting that internal conversation, that internal dialogue with yourself is really important, just for a safe space, because your safe space is inside your, you know, in your mind. And if that's chaotic and that's not looked after, man, you're going to be projecting to a lot of people that you care about, and quite possibly be, you know, not a good person, or just make bad decisions, I guess.
Skittles. Isn't it interesting also that, you know, even in the midst of, you know, your darkest times or darkest periods, that we're quite resourceful, eh? We're quite resourceful, and we are quite resilient. And many times we do have the answer to our problems and our issues. And so, bro, that's good, bro. That's good. I like that. And I like that, like you were saying, Charles, there might be people listening and watching this and, man, but realize that, hey, you have that power within. You have the answers to a lot of your trauma and a lot of the issues. So, yeah, appreciate those.
It's all good. It's, you know, I think the platform here and the space that you guys have created, between us is, you know, it's a good place to share that sort of information, especially for myself, you know, who I can openly talk about it because it's something that I've accepted that is in my past and I can never change that. So the only thing I can do with it is just to be accepting of it and be grateful that it didn't fall through.
I think you said something really important as well, also, is that check-in. Yeah, it's we have those who are in the right frame of mind. They have the capacity to check in on those who may be having those thoughts. And so I think for all of us, if we really care, and there's a bit of aroha, a bit of alofa or afi. It's important that we as a community, we as a people, even as a nation, just check in on your fellow man.
Absolutely. Just that. That was full stop on the end of that statement.
Man, it's so awesome to hear you just talk so openly about rock bottom and the blessings that come from that. It sort of inspired a thought about how sometimes they are absolutely blessings in disguise. And I remember one time you talked about a Three Guys car park and how now that's a place where graffiti art is being showcased and lots of art in the community is being showcased. And on a recent project, I heard that you had pitched more than 6 times to get funding. And so I was just curious about because there's a determination there. You seem so easygoing and so chill. I don't know why, but the term, and I did this because I got told that I was this on a questionnaire thing, but the term sensible drifter comes to mind, where you're so laid back, where you're able to go with the flow and see things, but also you're able to make decisions when the situation calls for it. And so I was just curious about, you're learning from persevering and still applying for that funding. And then the second part of that is the importance of finding the right talent for a project, because Therese Laulu is a friend, and we caught up at Lil Abs, and she had mentioned bro, you got to get this guy on mandate. And so I'm curious about that importance of finding the right talent and how you can apply that to keeping the right circle.
Yeah, man. Thanks for that. Did your research. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Perseverance for me, really simple. You grow up, get a lot of no's, you learn how to take a no. And then over time it becomes numb. You'll be like, hey, I got this idea, this. What do you reckon? Nah, oh, sweet. What about this idea? And you just, you become so, I don't know, I think you get so used to hearing no's all the time. And I know this is a big, whenever you listen to business people talk, they're like, man, you will take 900, 9,000 no's. It only takes 1 year to change your life. And that's just that's it for me. It's take your no's, move on, figure it out. Yeah. When we're talking specifically about finding the right people for projects, that one in particular, I knew after getting that no so many times, they finally gave the yes. I go, oh yeah, watch this. Now I'm going to show you why you should have given me the yes on the first time. And, I'm being fortunate enough to work with people who are amazing at what they do. So Siva Mai specifically, my first option was man, I got to get Samson Rambo on. And he's not on the application. I didn't put him on because I was he's too out of reach for me. Let me just put some of the other dudes on that I see doing everyone else's music videos. And for me, when I reached out to Samson, he told me man, at that moment when you reached out, I wanted to get back into the game, into the directing music videos game. And so stars aligned for me on this specific project. And I'm really, really grateful for Samson's mentorship throughout that, because he's big brother to me. And so there's a lot of things I learned on the project, a lot of things I got wrong and a lot of things I got right, which, I can be proud of. Teresa in particular, great story. I was doing this short film, web series, and she was looking after the location. So that's just the person who looks around, make sure that no one's running around the school and stuff, because we were based at a school at the time. And I kind of just knew her through mutuals. And so we met on set. This was we met on the Monday, and then I think it was Thursday, Friday, I got the funding. And I learned by then that she was a producer. And I was just you won't produce my music video, would you? She was yeah, whatever, I'll do it. Which she thought I was joking. But at that moment, I was yeah, cool, legit. Because I had known that she'd done Still Here. So for me, I'm cool, I'll get Therese, I'll get Samson, and we'll make this project work. And honestly, they pulled so many strings for me, so many favors. I'm forever grateful for that, just that group project, and I still haven't been able to thank them just for the process, because they made it so easy for me. So choosing the right talent for things is super, super important. You can get it wrong sometimes, it's okay. But I think it's always important, just let artists be artists. And I've gotten it wrong a few times. Sorry. My bro, Coco Shakim, he did my music video just before, and I didn't know you shouldn't ask for too many changes in the music video. He like sent me, I think we were up to like our 3rd revision. I was like, oh no, can you change the whole idea? And he hit me with a, hey, like that's not actually that cool when it comes to this stuff. Like we had something we talked about and you're now changing it all over again. So I learned from, you know, having him on board. And so when I came over to Samson and Therese, I let them, you know, like, hey, this is all of our baby. This is all of our project. However you think this should look, I trust you. And so I was really glad on Siva Mai. I just let everyone do what they wanted. Art department, makeup, wardrobe, all of that stuff. And it worked out really well for me. Yeah. So it's just perseverance and, you know, choosing the right people.
Bro, man, just talk about trusting the process, man. Trusting the process. You really have to. Like, you're right. In terms of the creative ownership, in terms of you get all these people on the team, and it is, I really believe what you're saying in terms of talent, making sure you get the right people on board and being able to trust, like, okay, each individual, okay, this is what your skill is. Just go with it, and I trust you 100%.
Pretty much.
That's cool, bro.
Yeah, and Siva Mai specifically, I was like, here's our concept. We took a while to find our concept. Once we found our concept, okay, cool. Every department, they can do what they want. Just see what they come up with. You know, they have a chance to let their art speak for themselves. And honestly, everyone came to the party. It was great. Yeah.
There were any times where you felt like, oh man, oh gosh, I might have to. I'm questioning this person, man. Was it?
Nah, there was just moments when I was like, man, all of these people are here for me. Like, everyone's checking in, making sure that like this thing is going great. And I'm like, damn, this is weird. It was weird, man. It was like, I think it was like close to 50 people on set that day. And I'm like, this is out of it, you know? So it was cool. And I was really blessed to have a really good like production team behind it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Just a couple more questions.
Go hard, bro.
Sorry, bro.
Go hard, bro.
The first one was, you know, we were talking about like the self-perception and the inner talk, and I was curious about what truths about yourself haven't you accepted yet?
I haven't really accepted that I'm actually really stubborn. I like to think, I'm all good, so I can have a listen, whatever. I'm pretty stubborn. Also, one thing, I think I've accepted it now, but body dysmorphia. You know, man, look in the mirror, not happy. Spent most of last year sculpting what I thought was a really great body. By the end of that, you know, I was in the gym 3 hours a week, look in the mirror, still not happy. So things like that, like just, have I accepted it? No, because I don't like the way I look. I'm pretty stubborn, but I'm not going to admit to that. And so I think there's a lot of things I still need to learn about myself. Yeah. Body dysmorphia, real thing though. That might be my biggest issue at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, bro.
Yeah.
That's
no, I think it's actually really normal. Yeah, like I'm self-diagnosed, by the way. I haven't seen anyone to tell me that. I just look in the mirror. I'm like, it's a leg. Come on, bro. Yeah. It's actually quite common in a lot of people that I've met and that I've spoken to, and a lot of people, you know, that's why they're at the gym all the time. They're just not happy with the way they look, and with the kind of popularity of social media at the moment, where everything looks amazing, you know, it just makes it worse for people. And there's all these people like trying to keep it real, look real, and it's still not real. It, you know, makes it worse for people. So, body dysmorphia, something that I haven't quite dealt with just yet. Yeah. Learning.
It's cool. Chucks, I don't know if that might be the first time I've heard the term. Yeah, so it's cool that we're like, that you're sharing that.
Yeah.
Because, man, it's another thing that we're trying to normalize on this table, like talking about these stuff that people go through, but we haven't, like, don't really know how to talk about it.
Yeah, that term itself I found on TikTok, and it was about someone who was like anorexic, and they were like, man, I have body dysmorphia, that's why I like don't eat food because I want to look really slim. So I'm like, shucks, I must have that, but like the opposite way, because like I wanted to be huge, and like it just wasn't happening, you know. So I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. So I've just self-diagnosed myself with dysmorphia, but there's definitely an issue out there with everyone like just not happy with how they look on the outside, which in turn kind of, you know, the inside as well gets to look a bit fugly sometimes. Yeah.
absolutely last question, I swear.
You go hard, bro.
So I worked in the museum for a little bit at Te Papa, and one of the things that we were taught there was that fine art gets its value from the story, the journey of the art. That's where art gains its value. And one thing I noticed about you was like that I thought was really interesting is just the way that you understand the journey of those who came before you. You know, your parents, your grandparents, like you've taken the time to learn that. And I think that gives you a lot of value as a father and being able to pass that down to your daughter. And so my last question is, when you look at your daughter, what of your parents do you see in her?
Damn. Don't know. She asks lots of questions at the moment. My dad asks me lots of questions all the time. You know, it's a really good question. I don't know if I can answer that. Yeah, there's a lot of me I see in my kid. Yeah, and it's just like creative. She's really she's quite self-aware as well. You know, so she knows when she's feeling sad and why she's feeling sad and what things, you know, made her feel sad, or also like when she's like, "Hey Dad, this is the second time you've lied to me." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Yesterday you said let's go for a walk, but you went and had a sleep. And this is the second time it happened this week." I'm like, "Okay, cool." She's like, at least she's voicing her, you know, her concerns with me. So for me, that's like, that's something that I see in myself, and that's something my dad implemented, both my parents, where they kind of allowed us a space to speak our minds. You know, and at first we were really hesitant because we were scared we'd get a hiding. But like, because they done that, my daughter can openly, you know, share her opinions with me about my parenting. So maybe that could be something. But if I'm talking characteristics and stuff, man, I don't know yet. I think she's still too young. She's still finding, you know, who she is as a person. You know, still losing teeth, things like that. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you for that question. I appreciate it.
All good, all good.
Yeah.
Man, the Western Guide, bro. It is the Western Guide.
Soon to be the Southern guy.
Hey, that's off the mic step talking.
Where's the God, bro? Hey, it has been, it's like I said before, it's been really enlightening in terms of listening to what you had to share, and your journey thus far, bro. It's really impacting and really powerful, really powerful and empowering in terms of who you are as a man, but also as a father, and representing our people as well. And so you're the voice that a lot of the young people are listening to, and even adults are listening to this. And so I can imagine that you carry a mantle, so to speak, in terms of who you are. And it's been a privilege, the brothers and I have been able to listen to you and just to have the talanoa in terms of the amazing work and the, like Jay was saying, the controlled chaos that we all have. But you are, in the midst of all that chaos, you're doing some amazing things, bro. Regardless of whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, you're doing some awesome stuff, bro. So, man, all of soy fools once again.
Yeah, thank you so much,
brothers.
Yeah.
Shoulders, honestly, thanks for sharing, and really cool to like sort of pick beyond the personality and like sort of help understand what makes you you. And I think the biggest learning is just seeing how like a lot of your struggles are our struggles, and I just saw a lot of my own personal like thinking like, man, I've always thought that too.
Yeah.
And it's just cool to hear it from other people, and the way that you've been able to deal with it really gives me hope personally, like as a father, as a son, as a brother, as a husband. It just makes me really hopeful for myself and my journey. So just, I'm grateful that our paths crossed tonight, and just the learning that you've been able to give. So just wish you all the best in your endeavors. And all the successes, especially as a father, because I just think with your knowledge of what's come before, man, your daughter's so blessed, but also you're so blessed by your daughter. So yeah, big ups.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Uso.
Yeah, it's been. Sometimes I forget that there's a camera out there. So like when we we want to create a space that's open talanoa as if we're in the garage or something. That's what it's been like for me. It's been real chill, and I'm really encouraged by just your journey and a lot of the things that you've shared on this table. Like, you know, we really look up to people out in the public space where they're doing all these cool stuff, but you know, people on the outside only see the glamorous side and not realize, man, these guys they go through it as well, and you got a story of your own, and so I'm really grateful for you for being open tonight, being like that voice for this next generation. I know that that's not what you endeavor to do, like, because it puts a lot of pressure, but yeah, you have this mandate, you have this purpose that God's given you, and whatever platform that you choose to be on, and God's going to use you in that space. So my Lord lover also, we look forward to keeping this connection, because it's yeah, we always love seeing the journey of our guests, especially our young ones. So thank you also. Give you your flowers. Like,
I know. Thank you so much.
Everything you've done. So.
Thank you so much. It's such a weird feeling, you know, to be given your flowers in person too, you know, and at my age, it's, you know, it's really empowering, and I'm so grateful that you guys have invested time to just have a conversation with me, you know, to pick my brain and to just listen. And I know I talk a lot, you know, and that's a lot that I've spoken tonight. So I really appreciate that you guys have opened up the space to not only myself to have our conversation, but for conversations for, you know, other people like me, and, you know, having conversations that maybe not everybody wants to talk about, but want to hear about. So it's such a, you know, lovely platform. Thank you. I feel like a lot is lifted off my shoulders. You know, I'm going through some stuff at the moment, you know, just away from the spotlight. And so I really feel like tonight's been really important in just my own mental health, and reminding myself that there's people who look at me in a different light, because we kind of forget that, you know, we just think we suck every day. So, you know, it's good to know that, you know, you guys genuinely care about, you know, people, you know, and having this platform as well. So again, thank you so much. You know, thank you for the love. Thank you for the space. Thank you for, you know, caring, you know, research as well. That's crazy, bro. But honestly, thank you. Yeah. To the team as well on the technical side. I know it takes a lot to put stuff like this together. So for you guys to take the time away from your families and, you know, of your day to come speak to me, I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, and like Brianna Fruin always says, like, I'll never stop, because there's people who have invested time in me. And so for that, I'll keep going. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, man. Also, hey, every guest that comes on, we always give them a gift, give them a bit of a caricature, a bit of a sketch of how we envision you to be. And so also, this is for you, my friend, on behalf of the Mandate team.
No way. It's my muscles back.
Maro also. Maro lava.
Oh, kai lava le alofa. Damn.
Man,
You got my tattoos, man. It's crazy.
Man, thank you. Man, thank you also. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much. This is amazing. The body, everything right.
Everything doesn't trigger.
Man, it looks good. The dysmorphia is real now. So I gotta get back into this. Nah, thank you so much, guys. This is amazing.
Oh man, appreciate it, man. Awesome. Thank you, bro. Thank you. Just like Jay and Charles was saying, all the best, bro. All the best with your endeavors, my Lord lover, once again, and all the best, man. All the best, and continue to do those amazing and accomplish amazing feats out there. And so don't forget to like, subscribe, and also your comments as well. Look forward to your thought, comments, and as usual, brothers.
Call out.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. You're right. Thank you.
God, yeah.
Is there someone that you would suggest that could be ideal for the podcast?
Samson Rambo been on here?
He's been recommended. No, he's been recommended quite a few times.
Samson Rambo, one of the greatest minds I've ever met. So I would highly recommend him to come and have a chat. Even Therese, you know. And I know they're pretty fresh in my mind because I've just worked with them. But, you know, he's actually taught me quite a bit in the last 3 months. And so I've kind of we're on a bit of a break, you know. After working on a project so long, it gets a bit crazy. But I would highly recommend Samson Rambo, Samson Wautua.
Cool.
Full names in case you want to find them.
And final words from our guests.
Yes. The final words. So you have a word of encouragement for our men. One last word.
Yeah, very simple. Remember to tell yourself that, you know, you love yourself. Just say, like, I love you. You know, say that to your friends. say it to your family, say it to yourself, say it to your kids. The more you hear the word love, the more it is the more likely it is to manifest itself into your life. And I've always struggled with just saying I love you to my mates. So to anyone listening to this, you guys on the table, love you guys. Thank you so much for having me on board. And let's keep rocking. It's journey always continues.
Awesome, man. I'll never comment and subscribe. Look forward to you out there. Comments as usual, brothers.
Wait. Okay. Let's go.
As usual, brothers.
Refine.
Unlock.
And take charge.
Mandate.